this time. Esta noche estamos ofreciendo traducción en español. Entonces, si su idioma preferido es español, puede seleccionar español en la mano derecha en este momento. Si tiene un problema, por favor, envíenos un mensaje. We're asking all our speakers tonight to please speak slowly, as I'm doing right now, to give an opportunity for our translators to translate appropriately. And once again, we thank our interpreters for helping us tonight. Tonight, we'll have speakers, and their time to speak will be 3 minutes each. There'll be a timer on my screen once 1 minute is remaining, and then I will spotlight my screen so that you know exactly how much time is left. I recommend pinning my screen when you're going to go up to speak, just so you know exactly how much time you have to speak. And that'll be the easiest way for us to keep on track of who's coming up next as well. To ensure that everyone feels comfortable speaking today, we ask that our speakers change their name to speaker and their appropriate number. You should have received an email from either Bridget Foley or Portia Ingram today. So please check your messages now or your spam just in case it went there. If you have any questions regarding your speaker number, please send it to us in the chat and we'll try to get your number and we'll be happy to change the number for you as well. If you don't know how to change your name, you can hover over your name and there'll be 3 dots on the right-hand side. Click on those 3 dots and then you can rename yourself. So if you could take an opportunity right now to do that, that'd be very helpful just so we can make sure we are orderly throughout the night. And we like to bring this up because it came up in a prior listening session that we like to create a inclusive and safe space for all the participants tonight. And so even though we don't require it, we do let people know that pronouns are welcome. If you like to share your pronouns, like mine is he, him, you're welcome to do so, but we don't require it. And we don't ask others to do it either. It's just your level of comfort or if you'd like to share with the group. And finally, this is a listening session for our task members and staffers. So we're going to be taking in your public statements, but it's not a Q&A. And so please don't expect it to be a giving back kind of situation. Does anyone have any questions or anything they need help with at this time? Seeing none, and as a reminder,
I do.
oh, yes.
Yes. Hi, Susan Steinman. I didn't receive a speaker number.
Okay, just give us 1 second.
Sure.
Vanessa, you're muted.
Ms. Steinman, did you sign up prior to 3 o'clock today?
No, not prior to 3.
Okay, so our speakers are required to sign up prior to 3 o'clock so that we can send out your speaking order. So there is another opportunity on December 21st if you'd like to be able to share your
I live
comments.
in the Mastic Beach neighborhood, so I wanted to do the 7th precinct.
Understood, but
I don't mind waiting till the end if you can slip me in now.
Understood. The cutoff time for the speaking is
Oh, I
at
didn't
3
know
o'clock.
that.
So that's okay. That's quite fine. And even though you'll be speaking and maybe you'll be speaking at the next public listening session, realize that we record everything. We take copious notes. We have the transcription. So it's absolutely fine for you to comment on December 21st.
Okay, let me write that down. What time, please?
We'll share the link with you in the chat. And then you will have the link to be able to sign up right this evening, even as we are on this public listening session now.
Okay, I'm going to listen anyway. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Vanessa, I was not giving a speaker number. I have an email that stated that I was supposed to be speaker number 7.
You are speaker number 7.
Oh, it doesn't say that on my screen.
You have to change it. Change yours.
All right. Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, well, thank you everyone for joining tonight once again. And now I'll pass it over to our moderator, Deputy County Executive Vanessa Baird-Streeter.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for taking time out of your schedules to join us this evening as we engage in the work of police reform and reinvention within Suffolk County. Some of you are repeat attendees, and we thank you for that. Some people are just listening this evening. Some people will be speaking, sharing their comments, thoughts, suggestions, and ideas and stories as it pertains to police reform and reinvention within Suffolk County. So once again, thank you for joining us this evening. I'll just give you some background information. On September 10th, County Executive Steve Bellone announced the members of the Suffolk County Task Force for Police Reform and Reinvention and the initial community process in compliance with Governor Cuomo's Executive Order 203 entitled New York State Police Reform and Reinvention Collaborative. As we are working with the County Executive's Office, and I am his representative, serving as a co-facilitator of this task force, along with my co-facilitator, John Kamen, we have been meeting as a task force. We have had 8 meetings of our task force, in addition to stakeholder meetings and one-on-one meetings, and engaging in the public to solicit input from individuals. So as we are engaged in looking at a plan and creating a plan for police reform and reinvention within Suffolk County, we wanted to ensure that the process was a collaborative one. We will be developing a plan that will be then provided to the public for comment. After that plan is provided to the public for comment, it's probably a 2-week period. Then it will be submitted to the Suffolk County Legislature. The legislature will consider the approval, and then we are required to provide our plan to New York State by April 1st, 2021. We currently have 36 members of our task force representing various levels of our community. There are government officials on our task force, law enforcement officials on our task force, the police union, faith leaders, and community leaders. The discussions of our task force are framed as such. What functions should the police reform? Employing smart, effective policing standards and strategies, fostering community-oriented leadership and culture, and recruiting and supporting excellent personnel. Our task force activities to date are inclusive of our first task force meeting was on September 21st, and that was an introductory meeting to talk about how the format of the task force and how we were going to engage in this process. Our second task force meeting was the first part of internal affairs, an overview of officer accountability. Our third meeting was internal affairs part 2, and we reviewed discipline policies and procedures. Our fourth meeting was internal affairs part 3, and we reviewed the referrals process, the IAB response team, external review of the Suffolk County Police Department and the Internal Affairs Bureau, access to disciplinary records, and availability of internal affairs reports. Our task force meeting 5 focused on traffic stop data, the goals of SCPD collection, and that's the Suffolk County Police Department collection of data. We talked about in development, there's a creation of a real-time dashboard for supervisors to review traffic data on a continual basis. The early warning system, we also had the opportunity to have a national expert present to us and be a part of our conversation and dialogue. Frank Baumgartner from the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. He has written the book of 20 million traffic stops within the United States. And he shared with us some thoughts and ideas that he has in reference to national strategies for implementation to address traffic stop data. Our task force meeting 6 was focused on de-escalation, use of force, and firearms training. Task force meeting 7 focused on arrest and warrants. We looked at total arrests by custody status. We also talked about community-based outreach and violence interruption strategies, diversion programs, and search warrants. Our task force meeting 8 focused on mental health response, looking at crisis intervention training, Suffolk County collaboration with the DASH Center, Suffolk County's response to persons with mental illness. We also now have created our subcommittees based on the priority areas of policing. And these areas and topics that were covered by our task force were really the areas of priority that they highlighted for us that they wanted to focus on as it pertains to police reform and reinvention within Suffolk County. So we have our subcommittees are formed, and our subcommittees are going to be focused on mental health response, traffic stops, police systems accountability, body cameras, training, staffing, community policing, arrests, and warrants. In addition to our task force meetings and our task force members, we've also engaged in additional outreach to our community in addition to these public listening sessions, and they're called stakeholder meetings. So we have the opportunity, stakeholders reach out to us. They want to share with us resources, research that they've engaged in. So we've had stakeholder meetings with the Suffolk County African American Advisory Board, the Suffolk County Hispanic Advisory Board, Assemblyman Phil Ramos, Access Church, Pastor Anthony Palella, Minority Millennials, the Suffolk County Guardians. We have some upcoming stakeholder meetings that are going to be taking place this week and next week. LI United to Transform Policing and Community Safety, the Human Rights Commission of Suffolk County, the particular subcommittee, the Administration of Justice Subcommittee, Long Island Advocates for Police Reform and Accountability, New York Social Action Committee, and United in Justice. Those are some of the stakeholder meetings that are going to be underway very shortly. We created our task force website in October, and I will encourage everyone, if you are on this call and if you have not reviewed our task force website, please do so. It lists all of our task force members, in addition to all of our public listening sessions, resources, statistics, data, policies and procedures of the Suffolk County Police Department, and a myriad of other information that will be helpful for you to understand. And when I talked about the subject areas that we've covered already, the presentations that we've received and part of those discussions are on our task force website. So we would suggest that you look at the task force website and start to look at the information that we have been discussing thus far as task force members. I encourage everyone to please be a part of the process, be a part of these listening sessions. We have some organizations that have really come together to look at particular areas of policing to provide concrete data, national models that are taking place across the country. And we really appreciate the efforts that you've engaged in, because you have been doing some of the hard work along with our task force members, along with the staff of the task force, to ensure that this is a collaborative process and that we address police reform and reinvention within Suffolk County. So once again, we thank you for joining us this evening. We look forward to hearing your comments, suggestions, recommendations, and stories as it pertains to police reform in Suffolk County. And as I indicated to you, we do have task force members, and the first task force member also serving as the police commissioner of Suffolk County is our police commissioner, Geraldine Hart, and I'd ask her to say a few words to you at this time. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Vanessa. And good evening to everybody, and welcome to the listening session. This is the seventh one that we've had, and they really have been a tremendous opportunity for us as a department to really just hear from our community members, hear their stories, hear their suggestions. And I will tell you that we take that very seriously, and we bring that back to our command staff, to our department, so that we share with them what we're hearing and some of the suggestions that we can implement immediately. So I want to thank you all for your time and participating, as we all are committed to this effort to make us the most fair and equitable department that we could be. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Our Deputy Police Commissioner, Risco Minchin-Lewis, also a task force member.
Good evening, everyone. It's good to be back and good to see all of you. We've learned a lot in the last few months, and we have a ways to go, because this is not a short process. This is a long process of listening, researching, and then applying the principles that would be best for Suffolk County's residents. We've learned about cahoots. We've learned about mental health crisis teams. Some people have talked about implicit bias and said it doesn't work. We have a great implicit bias training in Suffolk County. As a matter of fact, it's a national model. And one thing I would say to all of you is, when you think about saying something doesn't work, I want you to ask yourself, you might say a fork doesn't work. You say, well, Deputy, how's a fork not work? It doesn't work if you're trying to eat soup. And so that's the thing, is when you're asking yourself if something doesn't work or does work, ask yourself, what are you trying to make it do? Because sometimes what we're thinking it does isn't what it does. And so therefore, of course, it won't work. As Lev said, generally you can't eat soup with a fork. And so that's how you want to, as you listen into this, this information, don't forget to ask yourself, what are they suggesting its purpose for? And then you'll come up with better answers. I look forward to listening. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So now I would like to introduce our other task force members to you. But prior to that, we do have our Chief of Police on the call, Stuart Cameron.
Good evening, everyone. How are you this evening? I'm the Chief of the Suffolk County Police Department. I'm very happy to be here with you tonight, and I really am anxious to hear your opinions, like we've heard the opinions on the prior calls. Para cualquier gente en la llamada que solo habla español, me llamo Stuart Cameron y soy el jefe del Departamento de Policía del Condado de Suffolk. Estoy muy contento de estar aquí esta noche con ustedes. Me gustaría escuchar sus opiniones esta noche. Gracias.
Thank you very much, Chief. We also have Deputy Police Commissioner James Skopek.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Glad to be here. Anticipate this meeting to be encouraging like the others, and just looking forward to the listening piece and the positive direction we're heading in. So thank you very much for the invite. And Vanessa, thank you very much.
You're welcome. And now we'll introduce, so while the commissioner, the police commissioner, and the deputy police commissioner, Risco mentioned Lewis, are task force members. The other two members of the police department, I just wanted to ensure that they introduce themselves to you this evening. Our task force members, Dan Russo, please introduce yourself.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Dan Russo. I am the administrator for the Suffolk County Assigned Counsel Plan. The Suffolk County Assigned Counsel Plan is a nonprofit that provides private attorneys to people who cannot afford an attorney and for other reasons are conflicted from being represented by the Legal Aid Society. I'm a proud member of this task force, and I'm happy to listen to all of you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. I am remiss, so please forgive me. My co-facilitator, I did not introduce him. So the co-facilitator of this task force with myself is Deputy County Executive John Kamen.
No problem. Good evening, everybody. I just want to welcome everybody, and we really appreciate everybody's contribution and participation. It really is important to all of us in government to have the voices of the community heard. And so thank you for participating, and we look forward to hearing what people have to say. Thanks.
Thank you. Roger Clayman.
Thank you, Vanessa. I'm Roger Clayman. I'm the Executive Director of the Long Island Federation of Labor.
Thank you. Sharon Weber.
Hello, my name is Sharon Weber. I'm a criminal defense attorney and a member of Amistad, the Black Bar Association here on Long Island. And I've had 27 years of experience representing indigent clients and people of color.
Thank you. Rita Fernandez.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I am Rita Fernandez. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and ella. I serve as the Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer for Suffolk County and a member of the task force. Thank you.
Thank you. Pilar Moya.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Pilar Moya Mancera. I'm the Executive Director of Housing Help. And we thank you, Vanessa. We thank the Suffolk County Police Department and Suffolk County for putting this together, and looking forward to hear everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Linda Perdomo Ayala.
Sorry, I went to get myself a scarf, but
Sorry.
hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Linda Perdomo Ayala. I'm the Executive Chair of the Suffolk County Human Rights Commission. Mi nombre es Linda Perdomo Ayala y soy la gerenta de servicios o derechos humanos. Gracias.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we do have legislators that are part of our task force. They are unable to join us this evening because there's a legislative meeting that is continuing, but we do have staff to Legislator Richburg on the call this evening, and that's Mike Medea. So just making sure that you know that there is a voice from Legislator Richburg, and at least an ear from Legislator Richburg this evening. So we're going to go into the portion of our program where you are going to be providing to us your thoughts, suggestions, recommendations, concerns, stories as it pertains to police reform and reinvention. As Christian indicated, there is a 3-minute limit. Please make sure you're looking at the screen. He will put the 1-minute mark up so that you will be able to see that your time is winding down. I do not want to have to interrupt you, but if you proceed further than the 3 minutes, then I will kindly let you know that you have passed the mark for your time. And if you have passed the mark for your time and you still have something you'd like to share with the task force, please always feel free to share the information with public.input@suffolkcountiny.gov. That gives an additional opportunity, and many of you have shared resources, research, and other concerns you may have had through that portal. So we would appreciate you engaging in that. The other is we're going to ask everyone to be respectful of each other. We're engaged in this work because we want to ensure fair, just, and equitable policing within Suffolk County. So we ask all of you to be respectful. If we're asking for that, we need to be respectful, and we need to kind of emulate that in the chat and in just respecting each other and respecting the words. We may not all agree on what people say, but that's okay. Because that dialogue is the dialogue that gets us to the point of being able to really put in place true reform and reinvention within Suffolk County. So once again, I thank you all for joining us. I'm going to say your speaker number first. If you do not respond with your speaker number, then I will add your last name. And if we have to skip over a speaker because the speaker is not on at the time, we will go back through the list once we have completed the speaking order to allow for the speakers that may have joined late to be able to share their thoughts and concerns. So good evening, everyone. Thank you. And we are encouraged to be listening this evening. Speaker number 1, can you please unmute yourself? Speaker number 1 with the last name Tereshko, please unmute yourself. Speaker number 2, please unmute yourself. Speaker number 2 with the last name Russo, please unmute yourself. Speaker number 3, last name Boxwell. Speaker number 3, last name Boxwell. Speaker number 4, please unmute yourself.
Yes, speaker number 4. I basically wanted to get on this call tonight because there's a really, really bad problem in this area with racial profiling when it comes to driving. Me and my fiance actually have a, I don't know what you would call it. It's something we put up on the internet. It's called nopriceonjustice.org. And it was about how the Suffolk County Police fine and fee and surcharge the crap out of you until you can't pay it and you lose your license, you know. They had actually taken a step further. My fiance had gotten an op-ed and he was just in Daily News asking Governor Cuomo in an article, you know, to pay attention to the racial profiling that goes on out here. I, as a white woman being married to a black man, can tell you that I only get pulled over when I have my husband in the car. I don't get pulled over any other time. And if I do get pulled over in the car with him, I'm not treated the same way I'm treated if I'm pulled over by myself. And it's like I said, this is a very, very bad problem in this area in Mastic Beach, Mastic Beach, Shirley. And this has been going, I've lived here my whole 44 years, and this has been going on the whole 44 years when it used to be the 5th precinct. It's the 7th now, but it used to be the 5th. And it's just all the same, just young, gung-ho officers that are not, in my opinion, trying to resolve any issues. They seem to try to escalate situations so that they can use excessive force. I'm sorry, it's just been my experience and many of the other people who live in my neighborhoods experience with the 7th precinct.
Thank you very much for sharing, Speaker 4. And particularly, so just so that you know, there will also be opportunities, task force members may want to ask a clarifying question just to underscore and ensure that we're understanding what you're referring to. And the area that you talked about particularly was Mastic Beach and Shirley. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you for sharing, Speaker number 4. Speaker number 5, last name Bazmore. Speaker number 5, please unmute yourself.
Hi.
Hello, good evening.
My name is Latoya Bazmore. Hi. Hello?
Hello, we're here.
Hi. My name is Latoya Bazmore. I've been to almost all of the listening sessions, and it seems to be a trend in Long Island that the police are abusing people with disabilities, people of color, and I just wanted to know when, like, is there going to be a type of reform that's done immediately? Because they're still on the streets where I feed the homeless, mentally ill and addicted, and attacking these people, jumping out on them, searching them, ripping their clothes off in the middle of the street. It was done a couple of weeks ago to one of the people I know that's up there. And I just wanted to know, like, is there going to be some type of reform before the task force is meeting together and putting all this stuff together all the way in April? Is anything going to be, any steps going to be taken so that these people aren't being humiliated and dehumanized right now?
We got videos from
There's
yesterday.
videos of police officers coming up to the stop. There's an old lady that lives out there. She's been there for 3 years. And instead of offering her help or seeing if she needs mental health or seeing if she's addicted or anything like that, they shine flashlights in her face and at 2 o'clock in the morning. They laugh and joke and walk out with their hands on their hips and on their guns and intimidate and harass. I was out yesterday feeding people plates of hot food so that they would at least have that for the night. And it still was happening. One of them is a sergeant that's there, flashing his lights, got his emergency lights on, just sitting. There's no emergency. I thought that was against the law, you to use emergency lights if there's no emergency. Then they're laughing and joking because I was videotaping them, laughing and joking that gonna run after their cars if they keep coming around. Ha ha ha, it's funny. This isn't a laughing matter. These are people's lives. It's a shame that even in 2020 that people are treated less than a dog. You would give a dog something to eat, but you won't give a person something to eat, shelter. I just want to know if something's going to be done immediately, because this harassment and intimidation and dehumanizing people who have issues needs to stop now.
Thank you. Speaker 5, as you know, this is not a Q&A. This is for you to share information, but we thank you for sharing the information that you have. And we suggest if you have any information that you'd like to send to public.input@suffolkcountyny.gov, we would be more than willing to receive it. Thank you. Speaker number 6.
Thank you, Vanessa. I just wanted to know if they would answer it at the end of the session. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Speaker number 6, last name Torres. Speaker number 6, last name Torres. Speaker number 7, last name Ray.
Hello, how are you?
Good evening.
Good. I would like to personally thank Risco, mention Lewis. You know, you're first Black African-American woman, Suffolk County Police Commissioner. I know that you had you came out to one of my protests out in Shirley, and I meant to thank you last time we was on here. That was very special for you to actually come out to one of my big protests that I did out in Shirley. So thank you for that, and thank you for the great work. Out of all the people here, I do believe that you are really fighting for change. And I encourage all the other organizers and protesters to believe in Risco Lewis, because she, like she said before, she is a strong Black woman, and she pretty much understands what's going on. And to have you as the first Black Suffolk County Commissioner, I do appreciate you, and I do put my trust in you. So thank you, Risco. My issue is we have an addiction treatment facility called Wellbridge Addiction Treatment Facility that's in Calverton. We have a lot of retired police officers that work there, and I happen to work in mental health for New York State. However, I was threatened by a retired police officer over there, and then there's always been a lot of employees complain to me. They email me and state that there has been findings of racial slurs all over the walls. People have threatened them, and one guy, Caucasian male, said that if he wasn't retired, he would have shot him. People have gone to the 7th precinct and complained and wanted to file charges and they were not allowed to do so. Wellbridge Addiction Treatment Facility is only catering to the white audience. They charge $1,700 a day. No insurance is accepted. And it seems like the police departments are not looking to help with that treatment facility. It is backed by Engel Berman, which is a powerhouse. They're a monopoly, just like Northwell Health. They are building and buying everything on Long Island. And it's just unacceptable. My concerns is when you're a Black person in America, it seems like when you have a true issue and you're looking for help from the police department, it seems like they are often ignored. And I don't know why this is happening, because I see the work that Geraldine Hart is doing in the communities. You know, she's trying her hardest to help everyone. But there is just a percentage of people, of officers, that don't seem to care about the Black population. And I see this all the time when they're bringing people into the ER, they're threatening them. You say, get up again, I'll smack you. I mean, you're talking to someone that's dealing with a psychosis state, that has mental health issues. That's not the right way to talk to anybody. I hope with these meetings that someone does something, because Long Island is struggling and they're far behind. And I know my time is up, but please, Geraldine Hart, if you can, please put a stop to this. Because if I wear a recorder and I show you the things that happen that I see when in the hospital, you'll be like, this guy should not be an officer. But thank you.
Thank you once again, Robert. Speaker number 8.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Hope everybody's doing well. I spent a career working with at-risk children, many of whom were classified as learning disabled or emotionally disturbed. Some were in early elementary school, while others were high school age. In my decades of experience, I've worked with any number of law enforcement officers. High schoolers might require visits from probation officers, checking the progress of kids who've been previously arrested. I always found their interest was consistent and earnest. Sad to say, there were times I had more contact with these men and women than the youngsters' parents. For years, I'd recommended that some more acting out young men, was the way to say it back in the day, who happened to be good athletes, get involved in PAL programs. Some joined football teams, others took up boxing. I like telling the story of how a young Muhammad Ali got his great career started under the influence and training of a cop in his hometown. Also had personal stories of family members training kids for the Golden Gloves. Some of the youngsters broke barriers by competing for their home school in spite of the fact they'd been full-time BOCES students. One young running back made his first team All-County, others wound up winning Golden Gloves titles. Most times, police visits were geared to anti-drug and anti-gang messages. Students of all ages were comfortable in welcoming those messages. Bonds were formed. Boys and girls alike looked forward to the lessons and interactions. As adults, I should say, my wife and I were given comprehensive training on administering the life-saving Narcan drug. Our daughter was especially affected by the school's DARE officer and was, along with her entire school, devastated when she learned that he'd been shot and killed. Officer Jansen was shot and killed when walking in on a dispute with a gun in progress while off duty. Officer Jansen entered a restaurant where a man was holding his wife and a restaurant employee at gunpoint with a 12-gauge shotgun. When Officer Jansen attempted to intervene, he was shot and killed. The suspect then shot and killed his wife and restaurant employee. It's not an easy job. He was a nice man. He affected our kid's life for a very long time. And I would encourage people who are working with some of these younger people to do what we've done in the past, get them involved in athletics, maybe send them off to the PAL program when they get that thing started back up and again, and encourage that parents take an interest in their kids. I want to wish everybody a very Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, and a healthy, Happy New Year.
Thank you very much, Speaker 8. Speaker 9, please unmute yourself.
Hi. I just
Good
wanted
evening.
to say, first and foremost, thank you to the previous speakers. It's nice to see that there are other mental health professionals that are talking on this board at the moment. I'm just gonna get right to my question. I I noticed that the Suffolk County's budget for 2020 is $3.2 billion. 36% of this budget goes towards Suffolk County Police Department. Meanwhile, 5% goes towards education, 3% goes towards health services, and 2% goes towards affordable housing. Why does Suffolk County Police Department take precedence over the others? And, I definitely want to stress, the health services and the housing, because at least 2 people before me brought up the homeless housing, brought up health services. So I would like to know what we're going to do to provide more towards education, towards health services, and towards housing, because I myself have worked in mental health housing. I did have a crisis situation where I was put in a situation where I had to call emergency, and the cops showed up, and my client almost ran me over with her car, and they said, well, she's allowed to leave. That's kind of horrific, especially when, emergency is supposed to be your last avenue, I guess you could say. And I did call mobile crisis ahead of time. I know you guys did mention Dash earlier. So I would like to hear more about what you would like to put towards mental health and towards disadvantaged communities, vulnerable communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker 9, for sharing. Speaker 10, last name Prensa. Speaker 10, please unmute yourself.
I do apologize. Something just came up that I have to attend to. If I can speak when you circle back around.
Sure.
Thank
No
you.
problem. Thank you. Speaker number 11, please unmute yourself. Speaker number 11, last name Murray, please unmute yourself. Speaker number 12, please unmute yourself.
Yeah, hello, my name is Danny Hopkins. I'm with the Long Island Progressive Coalition. First, I want to applaud those of you who spoke before me and those who will speak after me. The people with a capital P have to take every chance they can to make their voices heard, especially in a system that works so hard to ignore them and keep them quiet. Second, I want to address the Suffolk County Police Department's despicable history of racism, which is systemic and permeates throughout the entire department, as well as the justice system as a whole, but time is limited, so for this evening's purposes, I want to specifically discuss the department's time-honored practice of using traffic stops and the so-called war on drugs as a pretext to terrorize people of color on Long Island. Thanks to Newsday, your racism has been exposed far beyond the communities you intentionally harass and over-police. It's in black and white for the world to see. Your department, your officers, quoting here, subjected Black and Hispanic drivers to tougher enforcement actions than white motorists over the past 2 years, stopping and searching these drivers and their vehicles at higher rates than experienced by whites. And while we don't have this corresponding statistics, we also know that in Suffolk County, where Black and Latinx people are approximately 29% of the population, they accounted for 66% of marijuana arrests in 2017. Many of these arrests were the result of stop and frisk traffic stops. The disproportionate enforcement is evident, it's clear, but we also know that even when it isn't present, police use the odor of marijuana as an excuse to violate a person's constitutional rights, to search their person, their vehicle, to upend their life, to criminalize them for doing nothing but driving, and for committing what the Suffolk County Police Department apparently considers a criminal offense, being non-white. Cannabis prohibition has never been about the plant. In practice, the war on drugs has been a war on Black and brown people on Long Island and across the globe. New York State will legalize cannabis in 2021, which will hopefully begin the process of restorative justice. But I urge Suffolk County to be proactive. Officials should immediately discontinue the department's racist enforcement of cannabis-related offenses, and police officers should be barred from using the odor of marijuana alone as an excuse to search a person or a vehicle. Thank you, but to be clear, I'm thanking the people who have showed up here to speak truth to power. I'm not thanking county officials or members of the police force who, as soon as leaving this forum, will continue to perpetuate a racist and vile system.
Thank you, Speaker 12, for sharing. I'll take the thank you as well. Speaker 13, last name Williford.
Thank you so much,
Thank you.
everyone on this call, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. I find the treatment of Black people being targeted by the police does not vary across the county lines from Riverhead to Manhattan. I was pulled over. The officer told me I looked suspicious when I turned on my signal. After running my license, the officer stated that he could see that I have no criminal record and informed me that my license, which was renewed just 3 months prior, was showing up as suspended as of 2 days ago because of an administrative review. Although he could not explain what an administrative review was, he said that he was required to take me into the precinct for processing. I was handcuffed, transported in the furthest back seat of my van, of a van, police van. Once arriving to the precinct, I was placed in an empty holding cell, which was so nasty smelling and deplorable. And, the conditions included dry blood and urine and unidentified substances. After about 15 minutes, I was then handcuffed for a second time and moved to another despicable cell where a male was sleeping on the bench. Shortly thereafter, the glass enclosure was shut, cutting off all air circulation, subjecting me to unbearable, inhumane circumstances, resulting in inconsistent stroke symptoms. My blood pressure was approximately 210 over 121. The paramedic recommended that I needed to be taken immediately to the hospital. I was told their policy required I be shackled to be transported in the ambulance, which was implemented against my disapproval. While in serious distress, handcuffed behind my back, short link shackles were placed on my ankles. I was then instructed to take small steps and short hops to get to the ambulance, even after asking for help. During the ambulance ride to the hospital, I was taunted and humiliated by the officers. After arriving to the hospital, I was instructed to self-transfer from the ambulance gurney to a hospital gurney while in handcuffs and shackles. I was referred to as a perp as they rolled me uncovered across the crowded emergency room to an examination stall where my hands were handcuffed to each of the bed railings and the shackles secured restrictions movement, which because of the shackles, my movement was restricted. While guarded in the stall, I experienced a severe spasm in my chest. I yelled out for help as I did not have access to a call or panic button because of the restraints. I was not assisted by the officer who was eating his lunch. This experience was traumatizing to me. No one deserves to be treated in such an inhumane manner. Why should anyone, especially cooperative law-abiding citizens, have to go through treatment such as this? Now, here are my recommendations.
So
Please.
can I say one thing? Thank you very much. Can I do me a favor? Let us get through the list, and since you're to the recommendation portion, I'll come back for the recommendations.
Okay.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much for the opportunity, and thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone that's speaking out against racial inequities and police mistreatment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Speaker 14. Speaker 14. Last name Coley. Speaker 14. Speaker 15.
So hello, my name is Terrell Dozier. I'm a member of LI United. And today I'm going to keep it short and sweet. I'd like to talk about what Suffolk County can do to eliminate pretext stops or pretextual stops. Pretext stops are stops that utilize a low-level crime as pretext to engage in a deeper search of a person or a vehicle. And these types of stops are often a key driver of bias in traffic stops. We know that in Suffolk County, equipment failure is a key driver to disproportional stops that are occurring based on the Finn Institute's data. We also know that according to the county's own data, Black and Hispanic community members are stopped for longer periods of time. They're more often searched, and force is used more often against them. The odor of marijuana is often a common rationale for searching people of color. And of course, we know that this rationale gives police officers the access to search a person and vehicle. And in most situations, even according to the defendant's report, paraphernalia, drugs, and weapons are not found. This year, Virginia and Maryland have banned police from utilizing the smell of marijuana as a basis for searching and arresting a person, and as well as Pennsylvania Appeals Court has also ruled that the smell of marijuana alone cannot be the basis for a vehicle search. Black, as previously mentioned, Black and Latino people in Suffolk County make up nearly 66% of marijuana arrests, even though they're less than 30% of the population. White people in Suffolk County make up around 32% of marijuana arrests, even though they comprise 68% of the population. And we have tons of studies going back decades that show that white and Black people use marijuana at similar rates. So the reality is that this is dangerous. It gives police a pass from doing what's actually good cop work. It builds distrust between communities and law enforcement, and it harms people, criminalizing them for activity that we know so many people are engaging in. The recommendation is simple. Put into the policing and reinvention plan the expectation that legislation will be passed that bars police from using the smell of marijuana alone to search and arrest people, arrest a person, as well as look into legislation that bans police officers from engaging in pretext stops altogether, specifically the use of equipment failure as a reason to pull a car over. Many of the arrests on Long Island are due to stop and frisk traffic stops, and so a ban of this magnitude has precedent in various states and will go a long way to mitigate the very clear issues that we know Suffolk County has as it relates to its own data. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Speaker 15. Speaker 16, last name Cruz.
Can you hear me?
We sure can.
Awesome. All right. My name is Antonio Cruz. My pronouns are he, they, and I'm a Suffolk County resident speaking about marijuana justice. I'd like to thank a lot of the previous speakers who have shared their stories and their experiences as well about racist policing here in Long Island. Specifically today, I'd like to be talking about data that shows how marijuana enforcement here in Suffolk County has been racially used against Black and brown residents. A lot of the figures have been brought up already, but in low-level marijuana possession arrests from 2013 to 2017, outside of New York City, Suffolk County was the highest county with over 6,000 arrests from 2010 to 2017, with more than 11,000 arrests being arrests being made in Suffolk County from 2010 to 2017. In 2017 alone, more than 3,000 folks were arrested on Long Island related to such charges, but 60% of these folks were either Black and Latino. Specifically, the numbers show that arrest rates among Black folks for low-level marijuana possession was 391 per 100,000 residents here in Suffolk County. Again, the highest in any county in New York, outside of New York City. Similar trends show Latino folks face similar experiences. Ultimately, Suffolk County, where Black and Latino people are 29% of the total population, accounted for 66% of marijuana arrests in 2017. Similarly, white people comprise 68% of the population here in Suffolk County, but only 32% of them have been charged with marijuana arrests. This burden almost always falls on folks below the age of 21. And in doing so, Black and brown youth are disproportionately targeted by such measures. In traffic stops, it's been proven that Black and Latino folks are more likely to be searched by police. And within these traffic stops where contraband, quote unquote, is supposed to be suspected, whether or not there is probable cause, police are more likely to stop Black and Latinx drivers. We must understand that that these policies are rooted in racial bias, and contrary to what Commissioner Hart says about SCPD's anti-bias training being the paradigm, it's actually the norm, because a lot of Black and brown folks are still being affected by this. Rather than investing in costly enforcement measures, we could invest in after-school youth programs for people of color, the summer job placement program, etc. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing, Speaker 16. Speaker 17, please unmute yourself.
Yep, I'm going to switch with Speaker 17. I'm 22. She's just tied up for a minute, so we're just going to switch spots. I'm also going to talk about pretextual stops tonight. My name's Lynn Kaufman. I'm with LI United, and I'm on the traffic committee. So I've been doing a lot of research. I was going to come and give you all kinds of information of the good news. Suffolk County, this is not just a Suffolk County problem, that there is all this bias in pretextual stops. That's the good news. The bad news is that this is the way our country works. In every state in the union across the country, there's bias in pretextual stops. And that is because our country was founded on racism. We're built on racism. Our racism is structural. So of course it infects all of our institutions. I've looked at places, Minneapolis and Cambridge and San Diego and North Carolina, and they all say the same things. Twice as many, 3 times as many times, Black and brown people are pulled over compared to whites and often searched more. And pretextual stops in particular affect Black and brown people much more than they affect the white counterparts. In North Carolina, after an exhaustive study about why this was happening, the conclusion that they came to was that police tend to hold unwarranted suspicion about young men of color. And how could they not? Every time you turn on the TV, the bad guys are Black and brown people. Every time you go to the movies, the bad guys are Black and brown people. It's part of our culture. And every police department does the same thing. I hate to sit here and disagree with Deputy Commissioner Risco Menton Lewis, but they all have anti-bias training. Every single police department across the country, and no one's statistics are going down. Black and brown people are still being pulled over, especially when it comes to pretextual stops, more than other people. So what do we do about this? We have to get rid of them. We have to get rid of pretextual stops. Oregon, Virginia, Texas, California, Massachusetts, they are all looking to either curb or actually get rid of pretextual stops because they are biased, and you cannot have a system in place and keep it going if you know it is biased and you can't make it unbiased. We often hear that we have to have pretextual stops because we have to protect people. And as you think about that, Black and brown people are being harassed. So I think it would be a little more honest if police said we have to protect white people, because they think that that's what this is doing. It's not. It doesn't protect us because we all live together. And if if one of us is not safe, then none of us are safe. So just to sum up here, this is not a Suffolk County problem, but we have the power to fix the problem in Suffolk County. And the problem, I would ask the committee to seriously think about getting rid of pretextual stops. You cannot fix them. Every place in the country has tried. No one has been able to do this. So let us just get rid of them and treat everyone the way that we treat white people. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Speaker 22, AKA Speaker 17.
Thank you.
So thank you very much. What I will say, and I'll just reiterate at this point in time, that, you know, we just want to be respectful of everyone, their comments. Everybody might have different ideologies, different thought processes, but we want to be respectful of everyone. Speaker number 18, please unmute yourself.
Good evening, thank you. Mike Simonelli, Suffolk PBA member, military veteran. In a typical year, our nation's 800,000 law enforcement officers respond to 240 million 911 calls, conduct 20 million traffic stops, and effect 10.3 million arrests, 1.2 million of which are for violent crimes, during which time 58,000 officers are assaulted and 18,000 officers are injured. Yet lethal force is used less than 1,000 times. In 2019, 96% of the subjects killed were armed with various weapons, including 599 with a firearm and 173 with a knife, leaving approximately 40 unarmed subjects, who, though unarmed, were assaulting the officers in the presence of an armed subject or trying to run over the officers. So in the end, there are about 5 or less unarmed subjects killed in questionable circumstances in a given year. However, it's understandable to think that all the subjects, armed and unarmed, killed in fatal police encounters are innocent Blacks, because that's how 100% of the subjects of major media stories and nationwide protests are portrayed. Because of the media's extreme bias, the public has no clue that white people are the subjects of more fatal police incidents than every other race combined. From 2015 to 2019, there were 4,667 fatal police encounters documented on the Washington Post database. Of those, 2,283, 49% were white. Among those white subjects was Justine Damon, a woman who in 2017 called 911 because she heard a woman crying for help in an alley. Upon approaching the responding police car, the unarmed Damon was shot point blank by Minneapolis officer Mohammed Noor, a Somali Muslim. Now, despite her white race and his Black race, unlike the constant accusations of racism, anytime a white officer is involved in the death of a Black subject, the only concerns of racism were whether Officer Noor would get a fair trial because he was Black and the victim was white. Though Officer Noor was found guilty of third-degree murder, among the 6 major cable networks, the Damon shooting generated only 396 stories, paling in comparison to the 7,059 stories on the Michael Brown Ferguson shooting, where Officer Darren Wilson was found to be completely justified. Similar disparities in media coverage can be found about the death of white male Tony Timpa, who in 2016 called 911 for help after skipping his psych meds and ended up dying after Dallas officers kneeled on his back for 13 minutes. Unlike the officers in the George Floyd incident, those officers were not fired and the DA dismissed the charges. The 6 major cable networks ran a mere 6 stories in 4 years. There were no protests. Yet after just 1 month, those same networks ran 2,345 stories on George Floyd's death and cities burned across the country. The media and social justice activists are pushing a false narrative that there's an epidemic of police killing innocent Black subjects. And that narrative is destroying police departments and civil society across America. It's up to this task force to know the facts and help the Suffolk Police continue to keep us all safe. Thank you. See you next week.
Thank you, Speaker 18. Speaker 19, last name McElroy.
Hello. All right. I go by he, him, mi pronombre es él, and I am with the Long Island United to Transform Policing and Community Safety Coalition. In July of 2019, Judge April Neubauer wrote that, quote, "The time has come to reject the canard of marijuana emanating from nearly every vehicle subject to a traffic stop," end quote, and added that, quote, "So ubiquitous has police testimony about odors coming from cars been that it should be subject to a heightened level of scrutiny if it is to supply the grounds for a search," end quote. I implore Suffolk County to pass a law banning the use of the smell of marijuana alone as a sufficient criterion for reasonable suspicion that leads to the search of the person's body, belongings, or vehicle. In Suffolk, Black and Latinx people make up 29% of the population, but 66% of marijuana arrests in 2017, while white people make up 68% of the population and only account for 32% of said arrests. Between 2013 and 2017, Suffolk County had 391 arrests of Black folks for low-level marijuana possession, which, per 100,000 people, is a higher rate than any other county in New York State outside of New York City. And the same holds true for Latinx folks, at 147 arrests per 100,000 people. The odor of marijuana is far too often the reason for pretextual stops, and is the only reasonable suspicion which is offered in many of these cases, as expressed specifically for her jurisdiction of the Bronx by Judge Neubauer, but which holds across jurisdictions. This is not an unprecedented ask. In July 2020, Maryland's High Court affirmed that police can't use the smell of marijuana to search and arrest a person, and in October, a Pennsylvania appeals court ruled that smell alone isn't reasonable suspicion enough to search a vehicle. I ask that, given how broken windows policing too often targets Black and brown communities in the first place, and that the smell of marijuana often leads to unconstitutional stop and frisks, that Suffolk pass a law that prohibits the smell of marijuana alone as reasonable suspicion for criminal activity, and thus any search without a warrant.
Thank you. Speaker 19. Speaker 20, please unmute yourself.
Okay, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to speak. I'm a member of Long Island United to Transform Policing and Community Safety. And I believe that now is our opportunity in American history to make substantial reforms to move us closer to realizing the ideals that we all hold dear of liberty and justice for all. Most of my ancestors came from Britain in the 1600s. In the 1800s, some of them were slaveholders and Confederates. In the early 20th century, my grandmother was a suffragette, and in Indiana, where miscegnation laws were in effect until 1965, my mother took part in the civil rights movement. On Long Island, are we making every possible effort to ensure that people suffering from a crisis in mental illness, substance abuse, or homelessness are provided with a response and services in the least restrictive environment, that is, in their communities, rather than a jail or a prison? As the director from 2010 to 2015 of the New York State agency, the Long Island Early Childhood Direction Center, I held all of us accountable to equitably provide to Long Island taxpayers accurate information about services for children with special needs, so that they could be educated as required by federal law and state regulations in the least restrictive environment with their typically developing peers. My sister, who has severe mental illness, is provided care not in a locked facility, but in the least restrictive environment within her community in her home state of Indiana. Raising two boys in Suffolk, I reminded them repeatedly that their brains were not fully mature until their mid-20s. At age 30, my oldest son finally said to me, "Mom, you were right. I know as teenagers, our children smoke pot now and then, and with all of their antics in school and out, they never received more than a reprimand in school." As a retired taxpayer who just wrote a check of over $16,000 in real estate taxes, I would like a chunk of my taxes to fund an alternate response for people in crisis due to mental health, substance abuse, or homelessness, as well as services to assist them so that they do not enter the criminal justice system. I see in this listening sessions caring, capable community members. You, our police and officials in Suffolk County, have the power to engage with advocacy groups like ours in an ongoing process to make substantial reform and to deliver a clear message to our governor that we request both political and financial support to make deep, long-lasting, statewide changes.
Thank you very much, Speaker 20.
Welcome.
Speaker 21, please unmute yourself.
Hello. My name is Nia Adams. I'm with the Long Island Progressive Coalition, Justice League NYC, and the Black Freedom Project. I'm also a resident of Long Island whose family has owned their home for 30 years. Many of the arrests on Long Island are the result of stop and frisk traffic stops, which have already been proven to be biased and racist practices and led to the mass incarceration of Black and brown folks. In Suffolk County, the racial pattern of drivers getting pulled over at a traffic stop is part of an ongoing US Justice Department review of policing. The Justice Department review includes a comparison of racial patterns in police pullovers of drivers with the general census population, examining traffic stops with a racial breakdown is a common practice used by both federal authorities and the criminal justice experts in this country to test for biases. As previously stated by several other speakers, Black and brown people are approximately 29% of the population of Suffolk County, but account for 66% of marijuana arrests. Though we know statistically there's no difference in use, there's definitely a difference of how communities of color and white communities are policed, particularly in Long Island, where we remain to be one of the nation's most racially and socioeconomically segregated regions. If we want to truly address community safety, then we need to stop criminalizing folks for low-level nonviolent so-called crimes that have continually been decriminalized, and allocate funds from policing to more community-centered programs such as education, housing, and healthcare, with an emphasis on expungement of records and true pathways to societal reentry. And I also want to address the fact that Suffolk County may follow the national precedent on implicit bias training, but there's also a national call, a denouncement of such training because it doesn't work. And in fact, Suffolk County actually incarcerates Black folks at a higher rate than a national average, which is already high. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Speaker 21. Speaker 22, AKA Speaker 17.
Yes, thank you, Vanessa, and thank you for allowing the shift. Unfortunately, I've been busy today, so didn't have a written comment, but I know you guys take the time to be here, and I wanted to make sure that I took the time to comment as well. So as you probably know by now, a lot of us have talked about wanting to really address pretextual stops, specifically around marijuana with regard to traffic. And I wanted to echo the things that have been said today as well. And I really wanted to go back in my thinking about this to so many of the comments that have come up from folks, mostly from white folks in the community, talking about how the over-policing of Black and brown neighborhoods is somehow justified because that's where the crime is. And I went back and read the Newsday article, which I imagine has been quoted a number of times tonight, that talks about how Black drivers are 29% more likely than whites to have their vehicles searched, to have searches of vehicles yield no contraband. And the article goes on to say that in Suffolk, whites are less likely to be stopped and searched, but more likely to have contraband when they are searched, and yet still less likely to be arrested. So I think what we understand in that, and I think we need to have an honest conversation about the level of implicit bias, internalized racism, and how it plays out in policing. Because if we want to use a line like, where there's more crime, there will be more policing, the evidence very clearly says that if you want to find contraband, stop white drivers. That's what the evidence shows in Suffolk County. I would like to stop pretextual stops altogether. We certainly can't come to somebody's home and say, I'm suspicious of you, I can go in and search your home. We know stop and frisk, you can't just stop someone on the street and say, I'm suspicious of you, so let me search you. And so there is no reason why we should be able to imagine ourselves suspicious of someone and therefore search their cars, especially when we understand the racial bias that is included in these outcomes that does not actually align with crime statistics. So I look forward to LI United being able to talk more specifically about our recommendations, specifically in traffic, and how we can really be progressive and lead the way in looking at an alternate way to keep road safety and get police out of traffic stops altogether. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Speaker 22. Speaker 23, please unmute yourself.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah. Hello, my name is Devon Tony. And I want to start off speaking about society and the criminal justice system. I believe need to understand that people from where I come from, like Amityville, Wyandanch, Central Islip, certain parts of Chrome, Bellport, we start off with no opportunities at all, you know. And I'm gonna say personally, me, I grew up a drug addict with drugs in my system. My mom was a heroin addict. So I grew up with drugs in my system. I went to Bellport School. I remember the first school when I was 9 years old. It was very bad in 1985 when I was 9 years old. I remember these butler guys, they rolling guys down the blocks. I remember guns and stabbings. I remember my mom getting raped when I was 9 years old. You know, I remember going to Sagamore Children's Shelter before I went to Bellport twice when I was 8 years old. And then again when I was 9. Then going through all of these systems, and then I ended up in juvenile justice system. Then I ended up in jail and prison, and then I get arraigned and people tell me, what are you going to do? You have no way to live, or you can't pay for a lawyer. But as long as I could pay for a lawyer when I get arraigned and I have somewhere to live, I could go home. You know what I mean? I could go home on bail, but I'm looked down on because I grew up poor. And I think society needs to understand them. People that were locking up are people that used to fight for necessities when they were babies. You know what I mean? We need to stop criminalizing these people and start begging for forgiveness for these people so they can stop begging for forgiveness for ourselves. You know what I mean? Me right now, I don't know if I was born with schizophrenia or I developed it, but I think I developed it from all the hell I went through, and I don't get no breaks for growing up with a drug addicted mom or me growing up on being drug addicted. I'm criminalized for that and I go to jail and I'm called an animal. But I was never given an opportunity. When the fuck am I gonna get an opportunity? Excuse my language. You know what I mean? I'm criminalized now for out there feeding the poor, feeding the drug addicted. You know what I mean? Trying to tell the drug dealers you got a better chance riding with me and trying to get a nonprofit and helping out your people and doing something constructive with your time. You know what I mean? Everybody out in these neighborhoods like Wyandanch, Amityville, Bayshore, Brentwood, they need love. They don't need the police jumping on their head every second. And I want to know why I'm not on this task force, somebody with lived experience. Why do we have police and all of these people on these task force deciding what the police are going to do with people like me and where I live? I'm the one that's getting abused by police. You need to hear from me and my people, not from the police. I see my time is up, so.
Thank you, Speaker 23.
Yes, thank you.
Speaker 24, last name Levin.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Shanique Levin. I'm with Island United to Transform Policing and Community Safety. And I just want to talk to you a little bit about the way that we do.
Speaker 24, you are going in and out. So you're going in and out and we haven't really heard.
Is this better?
That's better, yes. No, it's not.
Okay.
It's now. Okay.
Oh.
We're good, we're good, we're good.
Okay, thank you. So I just wanted to talk about how we deal with drugs. Drugs is really a health issue here, and we're not treating it that way. We're criminalizing everyone as opposed to dealing with the health issue. But then I'm with Long Island United to Transform Policing and Community Safety, and in particular, how we deal with marijuana. Everyone around the country, there's so many different states around the country and people in those states where people are making huge profits off of marijuana, while here we're still criminalizing people. People are still going to jail for dealing with this while other people are becoming rich. There is bias and arrests when it comes to marijuana. Black people and brown people are being arrested and ticketed at a much higher rate than white people are for the same thing. I know our Suffolk and Nassau County government, when it was on the table before, decided to opt out, but yet had no plan for how they were going to deal with the bias, how they were going to deal with the disproportionate amount of Black and brown people that were being impacted by the law. I spent time in a courthouse one day, and like 90-something% of the cases was about marijuana. So if we're going to be opting out of something, how are you going to deal with the way that Black and brown people are disproportionately penalized for dealing with this, doing the same thing that white folks do, for doing the same thing that people are now getting rich off of? It's not only is it not fair that Black people are constantly being over-policed, but when the stats show you that there is bias, how do we not genuinely take a look at what we're doing and make a difference? Look at how we can do things differently. Look at other systems that are working. If we're not the leader in this case, look to other states to be the leader and take that model and those examples and implement it there. We can't continue to have disproportionate arrests and encounters when it comes to marijuana, in the Black and brown community, and think that we can keep going on that way. Now is the time that once we're transforming police to really take a look at that and to make a change. And that's all I have to say today.
Thank you very much, Speaker 24. We will go back through for those speakers that were not on the call at the time. So Speaker 1, last name Tereshko. Speaker 1. Speaker 2, last name Russo. Speaker 3, last name Boxwell. Speaker 4, last name Torres. Speaker 10. Presna, are you ready now?
Yes, I'm here. I don't
Thank
have very much time to speak, but my name is Mariah Prince and my pronouns are she, her, hers, and ella. And today I've spoken several times, so thank you for allowing me to speak again. And today I want to talk about a topic that's very important to me and in my professional position, which is domestic violence. And I'm a little bit concerned that this isn't a topic that is assigned a committee or that isn't being given as much attention to as the other topics, which I think all of the topics are very, very important. But being that domestic violence is such a huge issue, not only here in Suffolk, around the country, but specifically here in Suffolk, it's a little bit disheartening that not as much attention is being paid to it. And I'm specifically concerned about the way in which victims are treated when they call for help and they try to report crimes committed against them. As a DV service provider, anytime that I have to direct a survivor to call the police, I literally have to cross my fingers and hope that they will come in contact with a police officer who knows how to do their job and knows knows the department policies. And I'll start by saying when an officer follows department policy and treats survivors with dignity and respect, they are inherently safer. The survivors are inherently safer. The survivors are more trusting of the process and they're less likely to return to the abusive relationship. And I am personally thankful when survivors come across officers that do their job and do it well, because it makes all the difference. Now, there are many officers who don't do their jobs very well, don't follow policies, they mistreat victims, re-victimize them, and give them straight up wrong information. And they also attempt to play judge and jury and just use intimidation tactics and interrogation tactics when the survivor is reaching out for help. But like I said, I understand that the other topics that the task force is looking at is very important. And I think at the very least, the task force should put forward initiatives to make sure that moving forward, we're looking at the issue of domestic violence as a whole throughout the county. So what does the data look like? Is the data being analyzed? Just like the traffic stops data, are we looking at these domestic incident reports and analyzing the data? Who are the people that are reporting? What are the results of their phone calls? Are they getting the police reports that they're asking for? Are the arrests being made that they're requesting? And really analyzing that data to really get a full understanding of the scope of the issues, because the problems are there. I've helped many survivors myself, and I overhear on the phone how survivors are treated. I've been in person in the precinct and seen directly how survivors are treated, how myself is treated as a professional by police officers. So I just encourage the task force to, if we're going to spend time dedicated to these other topics, at the very least put initiatives forward to give us the footing we need to maybe address this problem in the near future, maybe not by April, but moving forward, at least give the DV agencies and the people working on DV issues the information that we need in order to make changes in the future. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you very much, Speaker 10. Speaker 11.
Hello.
Hello.
I just wanted to speak on an experience I had with police officers when I was growing up, probably about 10 years ago, and I was in high school. And we all did stupid stuff growing up when we were younger. And me and my best friend took alcohol out of my parents' house and drove around with it and found a parking lot. And we were sitting in the parking lot and we started drinking. And cops rolled up behind us, and there was 2 male officers, and they got out in the car, and we were obviously very scared and very honest with them. We told them we had alcohol with us, and they very like nonchalantly were like, "You don't have any drugs with you?" And we were just like, "No, we have the alcohol." We even offered to dump the alcohol out in the drain behind the car, and they said, "No, it's fine. Have a good night." And like didn't even like penalize us for drinking in the car. It was so bizarre to me, and I still don't understand why it happened. So it's just crazy to me that you could let people go, like 2 girls that were drinking because they didn't have drugs. Like we could have gone into a car accident and really hurt people that night. And I always found that to be very alarming that that happened that night. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing, Speaker 11. I'm going to underscore. We have one more speaker, and then Chip will come back to you. I'm going to underscore the respect that we're asking from everyone that is part of this collaborative process. If we're asking for fair, just, and equitable policing, we're asking for everybody to be respectful. And if you find yourself not to be able to be respectful, then I would ask that you would remove yourself from the listening session. Thank you. Speaker number 14, last name Cooley. Speaker 14, last name Cooley. Speaker 13, we'll go back to the recommendations that you had.
Thank you very much. My recommendations are to stop targeting Black and brown people in your traffic stops. Please provide anti-bias and sensitivity training to your police officers. And please make sure that you not have policies requiring arrest for administrative issues. You know, anything that's just not dangerous when a citation should be adequate. And please keep holding cells clean and ventilated to meet safety and health standards, and not to require shackles when transporting non-threatening detainees via ambulance. And consider medical and mental health first aiders to be notified prior to any shackles being administered at any time, and to treat people with respect and dignity. Thank you so much for allowing me that time.
Thank you, Speaker 13.
Speaker 13, I'm sorry for your experience. I just wanted to ask, if I may, the precinct that occurred in?
This was in Manhattan,
Okay.
Across the one close to the Williamsburg Bridge.
Okay.
Yeah, but I had plenty instances in Suffolk County as well, by the Circle and Riverhead, where I was on my, I was not on my phone. The officer said I was. I said, here, you can look at my call history. And he said, tell that to them in court. You go to court, when you're assigned to go to court, then they adjourn it. So it means you had to make another date to go to court. And if you can't get off work, you have other things. I had my mother-in-law's 80th birthday party out of town. So I had to take the plea, which is just another form of systemic racism, and in that trap, because if I don't make my court appearance, then I get a summons or a warrant, and then I get arrested. I lose my job, lose my home, lose everything. That's how it all starts. If I, you know, and I'm not missing my mother-in-law's 80th birthday, so I had to take the plea. Plea deals are admitting that you're lying under oath. Why would you tell someone to say, yes, you did a crime, when you didn't do a crime? It's a lesser crime in court. It makes no sense. So all of these policies and practices are unfair, and this causes harm to people. Even law-abiding citizens like me, never been arrested, don't have any traffic tickets. The officer said, wow, you don't have a police record. So he wanted to remedy that by making sure that I get handcuffed. It was the most important day of the year for me. My husband was performing downtown with the out of town, someone from California, a singer from California at a very club. We had arrangements, I had guessing time. It was humiliating and it cost a lot of money. And I had to go back and forth to court to Manhattan 7 times just to get the suspension dealt with, just to get that off of my record. So if you don't have the money, if you don't have the time, what are you to do? These policies are designed to keep us down, depressed, and in a bad situation. And it really needs to change. And I thank you, Geraldine, and I thank everyone on the board, and I hope that you take all of these suggestions into consideration when you get with the people who needs to change the policies at the police department. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa.
Thank you. So this concludes our speakers for the evening. We thank everybody for joining us this evening to share with us your thoughts, concerns, suggestions, stories as it pertains to police reform and reinvention within Suffolk County. So we thank you. There were stories that were shared with us that are heartfelt stories that of people that have gone through a lot. And it's important for us to hear the stories because that really does affect the work that we're engaged in. So we thank you. Sometimes it may not be easy to share that story, but we thank you for coming forth and having the strength to be able to share that story in that instance and experience. As we engage, just know that we take very copious notes. We have a transcript. You realize that all of these public listening sessions are on our task force website, so you can go and review any of the others. So you'll see if there are common threads, common information that's continued to be shared amongst our public listening sessions. And as I said, we look at each and every topic that is discussed and categorize it as we're working into our subcommittees. It was mentioned in reference to the fact of the matter that there isn't a domestic violence subcommittee, and it isn't because domestic violence kind of transcends some of the subcommittees that we are looking at, and domestic violence has been a topic of discussion in our response as to the representatives that are in the police department or the precincts, and also looking at other policies as it pertains to domestic violence. So that does transcend a couple of our subcommittees. So be assured that that still will be part of the considerations as we're looking at reform and reinvention within Suffolk County. Some of you are repeat speakers, and we thank you for taking the opportunity to come on, talk about different subject areas and subject matter each session, which is important because not only are you providing that information to us, you're providing that to the people that are listening on the call. So it's an educational opportunity for everyone. It's an opportunity to be able to expose. It's unfortunate that certain times and certain individuals are not respectful of others. And that is a really unfortunate piece. So when I ask you, we have one more task force, which was listening session, which is going to take place on Monday, December 21st. And I ask that those people that are choosing to join be respectful of each other. As I said, we may not have the same ideologies. We may not have the same thought processes. We may not look at things through the same lens, but we have to be respectful of the experiences that people have and the thoughts that they may have and concerns that they may have. So I thank you. I will turn it over to my co-facilitator for some words, and then we'll get parting words from our police commissioner and our deputy police commissioner. Co-facilitator, John Kamen.
Yeah, I just say, again, I think it's informative. I appreciate, as we all do, all the folks that come up and speak, and both from the government side, the police side, but really from the community. We appreciate that there's stories and experiences from certainly on the law enforcement side that we respect where they come from. We appreciate what they go through. That doesn't mean that things don't happen to people of color that are different than a majority of the white community. And that's why we want to hear these stories. We need to hear how you were treated. It doesn't mean that we're not going to respect and work with our police. It just means that we want to understand how to do a better job with our police. And I think all the participation on this task force shows that that really is our goal. So thank you to everyone who's sharing their thoughts and experiences.
Thank you. Police Commissioner.
Yes, thank you, Vanessa. And thank you, everybody. Again, very worthwhile listening session. I just want to touch on a couple of things. Vanessa raised the domestic violence issue. I just wanted to reiterate that we have a standalone squad in the department to address domestic violence, which is very unusual. We definitely, want to make sure that we are proactively reaching out to survivors of domestic violence. So we have officers who do just that. They also have a matrix to look and see individuals that may be susceptible to further domestic violence, and they reach out to them as well. We have those domestic violence advocates in each of our precincts, and that's also a very useful tool, something that that we value as well. And then also we're working together and with Speaker 10. She has come in a number of times to make sure that we are addressing individuals with language access issues, to make sure that we are providing them the same services that they need. So that's something that we continue to work on together. And I thank Speaker 10 for her collaboration in that area. The other issue I just wanted to raise was it came up a couple of times about anti-bias training. I think the quote was that all departments have anti-bias training. That's simply not accurate. And I do want to commend our Deputy Police Commissioner Risco Menchin-Lewis. This is not an out-of-the-box training that we just dusted off and put out there. This is something that was developed over a long period of time with collaboration from all different departments. And I'm proud to say that the Department of Justice has recognized our anti-bias training as a model for the nation. January 11th, we will be traveling to Ferguson to train them in our anti-bias training. So it's something we're very proud of. It's something that our Deputy Police Commissioner put her heart and soul into, and it's something that we think is worthwhile. So again, thank you to everybody for your comments and your participation and your time, of course. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Police Commissioner Risco Menchin-Lewis.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to apologize first because yes, I do have a 6-month-old on my lap, as my daughter broke her foot and she's got 2 kids, and so I'm doing double duty tonight. However, what I'd like to say is this: we're listening to what you're saying. Everything that everyone said is not going to be taken in consideration. Everything will be taken in consideration, but not everything's going to be done. But also that doesn't mean everything people says means nothing will be done. And the whole point of the task force is to listen to everyone, do research. Task force is doing research, police department is doing research, and come up with the best practices for Suffolk County. Now, I like to address the idea of implicit bias. To say that implicit bias doesn't work, frankly, it just doesn't make any sense, and I'll tell you why. Most people do not believe, especially the majority population, they don't believe bias exists. They do not believe it exists. They do not believe people of color are treated differently. I've been a person of color all my life, and I can tell you people of color get treated differently. My point is, a lot of officers, a lot of majority populations do not know what bias is. A lot of people in America don't know what bias is. They don't believe bias exists. Implicit bias is not designed to say, oh, all of a sudden you have no bias. Implicit bias is designed to say bias exists. And bias exists, maybe I have bias. And if I have bias, maybe I should look at my bias while I'm acting. It's not designed to stop all bias. It's only designed to make people understand that bias exists. We're at like the ABCs. We're at pre-K right now. But that does not mean we don't have to change procedures in the department, actions in the department, get additional training, and maybe even some outside organization. The county may have to come up with some things around other issues like mental health, etc. It's not, having implicit bias doesn't mean you don't have other things. It just means it's an introduction to an idea that many people do not believe exists. So I like to say that. Thank you all for your time. It's important that you all talk, whether we agree or not, whether you agree with one or not, other or not. It's a phenomenal thing that we've had these 7 sessions and we're listening. It's a phenomenal thing that we're listening to all the different various organizations. So we're in a good process right now, and hopefully we'll come out, all of us, with more knowledge and for the better, and especially the police department. So I thank you all for your time, for all of your time. Thank you.
Thank you, DPC. So this concludes our listening session, public listening session number 7. We have one additional listening session that's going to be taking place. That'll be on December 21st. That particular listening session is focused on the East End. However, you do not have to be a resident of the East End just to participate. So Susan, you'll be able to log on to that one and be able to share with us your comments at that point in time. And it also was important for us to ensure that we had dialogue and had the opportunity for the East End to be able to communicate and share with us their concerns, thoughts, recommendations, and suggestions as we engage in police reform. While they are not part of our policing district, they do traverse the entire span of Suffolk County, residents of the East End. So it was important to engage the East End towns in our dialogue as we're engaged in police reform and reinvention. The other thing I'd like to communicate to you is starting in 2021, I believe all of them are complete for 2020, but 2021, your community meetings with your precincts will commence again. And that is an opportunity where, while this opportunity was just a listening session, that is an opportunity that provides for Q&A. If you have particular questions about what's going on in your community, your neighborhood, your precinct, or the Suffolk County Police Department, you have an opportunity to be able to engage with command staff. You can engage with patrol officers, you can engage with people, police personnel who are part of your community. So we encourage you to participate in your community, police community meetings as well. So with that being said, I thank you all for your time this evening. Blessings to you. Happy holidays to everyone. Some of you we know that we'll see on Monday, December 21st. But if we don't, happy holidays to you. Thank you for participating. And I ask that as we go on our way and the work that we do and the interactions we have with people, please be respectful of everyone. Thank you and have a great evening. Take care.
Good night. Stay safe in the snow tomorrow.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
God bless the police.
Very, very informative.